Elon Musk and Donald Trump have finally collided in public, and it didn't happen over China, Russia, or some distant military flashpoint. It happened over Canada. Not Beijing, not Moscow, Ottawa. That alone tells you how unusual this moment is. Because Canada is not just another trading partner. It is America's closest ally by geography, by economics, and by modern history. The United States and Canada share the longest undefended border in the world. Their economies are not merely connected, they are interwoven so tightly that in many sectors it is almost impossible to separate one from the other without causing damage to both. And yet, over the past several months, President Donald Trump has treated Canada less like a partner and more like an economic adversary. Broad tariffs, escalating threats, public rhetoric that frames trade imbalances as betrayal. What began as pressure has evolved into confrontation. Then Elon Musk stepped in, not quietly, not privately, but publicly, and said the tariffs were a mistake. That single word shifted the balance of power inside Washington. Because moments like this are extraordinarily rare. It is almost unheard of for the most powerful private citizen aligned with a sitting president, someone who helped fund his campaign, amplified his message, and now holds a formal advisory role inside the administration to publicly contradict the president's signature economic policy. Power at that level does not tolerate dissent. It absorbs it, silences it, or eliminates it. Public contradiction is not part of the script. And yet, here we are. To understand why this matters, you have to step back from the headline and look at the architecture beneath it. The economic relationship between the United States and Canada did not form by accident. For decades, it was built deliberately through agreements designed to reduce friction, increase predictability, and encourage cross-border integration. In 1994, NAFTA formalized that integration. In 2020, it was renegotiated and replaced by the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, a deal Donald Trump himself championed as a historic win for American workers. He called it the greatest trade agreement ever signed by the United States. He campaigned on it. He used it as proof that he could reshape global commerce without destroying alliances. Fast forward to his second term, and that same agreement is now being strained by sweeping tariffs imposed on Canadian goods, 25% across multiple sectors, with additional pressure on energy exports. These are not symbolic penalties, they are structural disruptions. A modern automobile assembled in Michigan may cross the US-Canada border half a dozen times before completion. Steel from Ontario becomes infrastructure in Ohio. Agricultural products flow north and south daily, feeding supply chains that depend on timing, efficiency, and cost stability. When tariffs enter that system, they act like sand in finely tuned machinery. The friction spreads quickly. Canada responded predictably. Prime Minister Mark Carney, newly in office but no stranger to economic crises, implemented retaliatory tariffs targeting American exports. Billions of dollars worth of goods were placed under countermeasures. The message was calm but firm. Canada would not absorb economic punishment without response. That is the external conflict. Now consider the internal one. Donald Trump's view on trade has been remarkably consistent for decades. Long before he entered politics, he argued that the United States was being exploited by trading partners. He has always favored tariffs as leverage. In his worldview, trade deficits are evidence of weakness, and economic pressure is a tool of strength. This is not a campaign tactic for him. It is a deeply rooted belief. But Musk operates from a different framework. Musk is a builder of global systems. His companies, Tesla, SpaceX, and others, rely on international supply chains, cross-border talent, raw materials from multiple continents, and regulatory predictability. His vision of American strength is not centered on isolation or bilateral pressure. It is centered on technological dominance, powered by integrated markets.
For Musk, tariffs on Canada are not abstract policy tools. They are direct costs. They ripple through manufacturing inputs, energy pricing, battery materials, and transportation logistics. Even small increases compound when multiplied across global production networks. And that is the heart of this fracture. Trump sees leverage, Musk sees instability. Trump sees negotiation strength, Musk sees supply chain disruption. Trump believes pressure produces concessions, Musk believes friction reduces competitiveness. For months, any disagreements between these perspectives were managed privately. That is how coalitions survive. Differences exist, but they remain behind closed doors. When Musk posted publicly that the Canada tariffs were counterproductive and harmful to American competitiveness, he broke that unwritten rule. The silence from the White House afterward was telling. There was no immediate rebuke, no direct contradiction, no clear reconciliation. In Washington, silence is rarely accidental. It signals complexity. It suggests active internal debate. And the world noticed. Canada noticed, European leaders noticed, American business leaders noticed. Because when a president's closest high-profile ally publicly challenges a cornerstone policy, it signals that the administration is not unified. That matters in negotiations. It affects leverage. It influences expectations. For Prime Minister Carney, this development subtly shifts the calculus. If powerful voices inside the American governing coalition oppose the tariffs, then time may be on Canada's side. Retaliatory measures, combined with patience, could generate enough internal American pressure to force policy adjustments. For American manufacturers and farmers, Musk's stance offers something equally important: validation. Many industries dependent on Canadian trade have been reluctant to publicly challenge the administration. Doing so carries political risk. Musk's dissent creates space for a broader conversation. But the implications go deeper than trade. What this moment truly exposes is a structural tension inside the administration's governing philosophy. On one side is economic nationalism, transactional, pressure-driven, skeptical of multilateral frameworks. On the other side is innovation-driven globalism, dependent on open markets, predictable agreements, and integrated supply chains. These two visions can coexist temporarily when policies do not collide directly. But when tariffs disrupt the foundation of continental integration, coexistence becomes difficult. Musk's break does not mean the alliance is over. Both men still derive benefits from their association. Trump benefits from Musk's platform and technological credibility. Musk benefits from regulatory access and influence. But the relationship has changed. Trust is altered once disagreement becomes public. And markets operate not just on numbers, but on signals.
In the near term, the most likely outcome is managed tension. The tariffs remain in place while behind-the-scenes negotiations attempt to soften their impact. Adjustments may be framed as refinements rather than reversals. Political language will matter. In the medium term, escalation remains possible. If Canadian retaliation hits sensitive American sectors, agriculture in the Midwest, manufacturing in the Great Lakes region, energy markets in border states, domestic pressure could intensify. Long-term, the question becomes larger than any specific tariff schedule. What kind of economic identity will define American power in the 21st century? Is it a model built on strategic pressure and bilateral leverage, or one built on technological integration and rules-based stability? Musk's worldview assumes that American innovation thrives in open systems. Trump's worldview assumes that American strength is maximized through controlled pressure. These frameworks are not minor policy differences. They represent competing philosophies about globalization itself. The significance of this moment lies not in a social media post, but in what that post revealed. The governing coalition is not ideologically uniform. The unity that appeared solid may have depended more on alignment of convenience than alignment of principle.
When that alignment fractures publicly, uncertainty enters the system. Uncertainty can destabilize, but it can also create opportunity. Markets may adjust expectations, diplomats may recalibrate strategies, businesses may advocate more openly. Canada did not initiate this conflict, it responded to it, and now it finds itself observing divisions within the very administration applying pressure against it. The tariffs remain, the countermeasures remain, supply chains remain disrupted, but the political environment surrounding them has shifted. The wall of unified messaging has its first visible crack, and cracks have a tendency to widen under stress. Watch how the White House responds in the coming days. Watch whether Musk elaborates or moderates his position. Watch whether Canada references the dissent in diplomatic conversations. Watch commodity markets and automotive production data. Watch agricultural futures. The story now lives in signals. History rarely announces itself while it is unfolding. It moves quietly through institutional tensions, public disagreements, and recalculated alliances. This may be one of those moments, because when the wealthiest entrepreneur in America publicly questions the president's defining economic policy, not over a distant adversary, but over the country next door, it forces a deeper question. If this disagreement surfaced publicly, what conversations are happening privately? And if those private conversations expand, how long before this fracture becomes something larger than a trade dispute? That is the question hanging over Washington tonight. The answer will shape not only the future of U.S.-Canada relations, but the broader direction of American economic power in a world where integration and nationalism are increasingly on a collision course.